Welcome back, everybody. So the Department of Water and Sanitation has urged South Africans to use water sparingly as the country's dam levels decreased from 62.3% to 61.1% in just a week. The cautionary call from South Africa's custodian of water resources comes amid a heat wave that engulfed large parts of the country, which of course results in higher water consumption. According to the department, excessive usage of water could be detrimental to stabilising the water resources system in the country. We've got Sputnik Ratau, the national spokesperson of the Department of Water and Sanitation, to talk to us about the decreasing dam levels. Sputnik, good to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity. Good morning to the viewers.
Sputnik, a bit of a worrying situation we have right now. Perhaps you can give us a better idea. I mean, the statistics that I've been giving to viewers, is that how it stands still at this point? Is that the latest you have?
Leanne, yes, very correct. That is the latest that we have. We haven't seen the early rains that we always hope for, in the month of September into October. I think we still can see the impact of climate change, but also very high water usage by South Africans generally. As we always say, South Africans use on average much higher. They've got higher water demand than the world average, where the world average is about 176 liters per person. We are at the rate of about 237 liters per person. So that's quite a huge difference. Yeah. And yet we know that we continue to have water scarcity just because we are a water scarce country anyway.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if we now have to talk to water restrictions, are we at that point?
We are not yet there, but all we are saying is we need to be cautious. We need to be, we need to have this issue of managing our water demand as part of our DNA. It's something that we cannot say enough as a department, because that is what we have to work towards. But South Africans are just not having that in their DNA at the moment. Once we have the first few droplets that we regard as serious rainfall, maybe a flash flood somewhere and so on, we always have the belief that we've got sufficient water, but we are not anywhere near there. We know that parts of our country are still experiencing drought. The Eastern Cape is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Parts of Limpopo still. Northern Cape, we know that the farmers are struggling there. So that is the reality of where we are.
Yeah, and it is a harsh reality, and it's something that we keep on needing to remind ourselves, because sometimes we just, we take it for granted that it'll always be there. When you turn a tap on, it'll be there, but it won't be the case, and this is something we need to focus on. So the Vaal Dam, as we've been hearing, is now below 30% capacity, and it's part of 14 other dams that form part of the integrated Vaal River system. How does the Vaal Dam level affect the rest of the system and, of course, the country in general?
Well, the Vaal Dam is very important, Leanne, because that is the abstraction point for Rand Water. Rand Water, remember, is our biggest water board, but more critically, it is the water board that supports the economy of Gauteng. So if the Vaal Dam goes, below certain levels, we would be looking at it with a great deal of concern. Right now, it is at about 29.1%, which it has not been for quite a while. But obviously, even then, we are now in right at the tail end of October. We believe that we should be having some rains in the next month or two that should be able to stabilize the integrated Vaal River system. The system in itself, as you correctly put it, is a combination of 14 dams with the catchments in Mpumalanga, Free State, Northern Cape, as well as Northwest. But primarily, because the system is still above 54%, we are still not at the point where we need to look at restrictions. But obviously, when we look at the Vaal Dam in itself, once it reaches levels of about 20%, which we believe it will not get there, we always have the Sterkfontein Dam, which is our reserve dam, where we can always tap into it to recharge the system, and ultimately the Vaal Dam, which we last did in 2016. If you remember, we had to go and draw water from there because the Vaal Dam had gone below 20%.
If we look at the provinces, and we have to do a bit of a comparison in terms of which province is faring worst at this point. I know you mentioned the Eastern Cape, and that has always been a very big problem. But now you're talking the Vaal. Obviously, that is also affecting Gauteng. Let's talk to some of the other provinces and some of the concerning and most pressing issues.
Yes, you're correct. The Eastern Cape definitely on top of the pie. We see the continued drought in Amatole district. We know that the Algoa system is also taking a beating, as well as the Amatole water supply system itself. We haven't seen much of a recovery. At the time when we had some snow in the Eastern Cape in the winter, we were hoping that it would be quite sufficient to be able to recharge when the snow thawed. But that was not to be, and therefore it is our major concern. KZN has got some parts that we are still concerned with. If you remember, at the height of the drought, KZN was the hardest hit province, so that recovery is still underway. Limpopo, we know that the Sekhukhune area is in a tough situation. Vembe district as well. The southern part of the Northern Cape is where we are also keeping a very keen eye. The contradiction that we see, Leanne, is particularly in the Western Cape, where we see the Western Cape water supply system that supplies mainly the city of Cape Town and surrounding areas at close to 100%. The Theewaterskloof Dam, the biggest in the province, is just above 100%. But when you look at the Karoo region, then you see that the Karoo region, being the summer rainfall area, is still in a devastating drought. So that is a contradiction in one province only, which has got two rainfall seasons that are quite divergent. So those are some of just the areas that I might be able to highlight in the time that we have.
I know you touched a little bit on some of the reserves, particularly when it comes to the Vaal and Sterkfontein, but in terms of other reserves, in case the dam levels drop even more for the provinces that you're talking to, how are they still looking right now?
The Eastern Cape is our toughest cookie. And we know that in the area of Amatole, the dams there are really, really dry. We are now in the situation where we are actually cutting water from other areas to be able to assist. And remember that we cannot simply dry out other systems in order to be able to feed the others. So it's a very difficult juggling situation that we are having there. But Minister did give a directive recently that we have to add more of the tankers, especially, that then will be able to be utilized in order to assist the municipalities there to be able to supply water in that area. So it is a very difficult one that we are facing there. In some of the other areas, you find that some of the systems are not in such a bad space, but the reticulation systems within municipalities is where we then have difficulty, because if those systems do not operate optimally, chances of losing water along the route to the supply of consumers then becomes another concern.
It really is. I mean, let's now just speak directly to South Africans in terms of what we can do to help. We always talk to don't waste water, do these kind of things, but let's put it out there, because we're going through in a lot of provinces and a lot of areas heat waves, and people are using water a lot more than they normally would. But what are the kind of things that we can do to assist and help as South Africans?
Leanne, if you remember, at the height of the drought in the Western Cape, part of what we were preaching is let us use, less time in our showers rather than have a full bath, of water. Let us use a shower where we do not have a shower. The other time, the CEO of Rand Water made an example that actually you do not need water in the bath that is higher than 20 centimeters for you to have a full bath, and you would still be spanking clean when you get out of bed. But there are other technologies that have also come in. Remember that in the shower heads, there are some technologies that reduce the amount of water without reducing the pressure that you might be able to need. One of the things that is very simple that needs to be done, both domestically as well as outside of the households by municipalities, is to make sure that the infrastructure is in good nick. Because if we lose water because of breakages, because of illegal connections, because of pollution, remember that if we pollute our ecosystems, we're also reducing the amount of water available. And we're also creating blockages that might end up with water not being able to reach certain areas. So those are some of the things. Another thing is that we need to practice more as South Africans is the use of grey water, the recycling of water, because we do not need really potable water to clean our paving outside, to wash our cars. Why do we need hose pipes in order to wash down a car instead of using a bucket that we can be able to control how much water we actually utilize? Do we have to water our gardens in the middle of the day when the sun is so hot and we're going to lose water to evaporation? Those are some of the little things that we can be able to look at. Industry and agriculture, reduction in water demand, not in the sense of using less water, but in using smart technology to be able to make sure that water that we are utilizing at any time is water that we can be able to reuse and recycle as well.
Sputnik, I want to talk to the status of municipalities, though, because this is one of the major issues. A lot of municipalities are in a dire financial position. They obviously are not paying for services. This has got service delivery up in a big mess at the moment. I mean, I can't describe it in another way. But this is a vicious circle. What is going on there in terms of the debt in municipalities and the payment thereof for the services of water, and how badly is this affecting your department?
Major question, Leanne, which has got huge ramifications. Remember that if municipalities, as things stand, continue to have a rising debt to the department, to water boards, then we are actually creating a situation where the supply of water becomes, there is a threat to the supply of water. Because if municipalities do not pay for the services that they receive from the department, then the raw water, the infrastructure development and operations of maintenance of the bulk infrastructure become threatened. And remember that as a department, that is where our responsibility is. But if consumers, and I'm saying here generally, domestic as well as industry, agriculture, and everybody, do not pay the municipalities, then the municipalities do not become viable in order to be able to do their own operations and maintenance of their reticulation infrastructure, as well as the operations and maintenance of the water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants. And that is where you also see ultimately the breakage of infrastructure. And you have situations like you would have your sewer spillages, where you would have your potable water running around, filling the streets and not going to consumers. And that is a difficulty. So it is that vicious cycle. We have to work very closely with Cocteau and Salga to make sure that those municipalities that owe us, some of them in the billions, actually start keeping to their word and paying even smaller amounts over time, so that we can be able to make sure that there is money that comes in for us to be able to do the things that we have to do. We have to look at, after the water ecosystems wherever they are, but we cannot do that if we do not have the necessary funding. And remember, that is funding that we have to generate from those tariffs that we charge our major water users. And therefore, that is what we use for operations and maintenance.
But, Sputnik, this also puts a very big question mark on the quality of water that South Africans are consuming. I mean, because it is a vicious circle, and you've explained it to us. It is the paying for the municipal fees. It is then, of course, going into the infrastructure. It is then going into how the water is treated and what we're receiving. And, a lot of people talking to the deterioration in the quality of water in in South Africa. Can you talk to that? I mean, if we look at the quality of water still in South Africa, we've always bragged about what a brilliant quality we have. But I mean, we have now got major question marks over that. And there's also still all the sewage spillage that's in the Vaal River. That's a completely different conversation. If we have time, perhaps we can address that. But I want to talk to the worrying quality levels in South African water.
Leanne, in the main, when we look at water quality coming through the tap, the quality through the tap is still of good standard. The main concern that we have as a department at the moment is the quality of water at source. And that is a big concern because remember, that also has implications on the cost of treating that water. That is why the issue of pollution is very, very critical to us. The issue of invasive alien species in our water courses is a very grave concern to us. The issue of spillages of substandard or even untreated sewage into our ecosystems have got an impact on the quality of water, especially at source. And that is our main concern. One of the things that we try to do, and that is why I think the importance of the water boards comes to the fore, because they are the custodians of the water quality coming out of the tap, and that is why we are quite confident that the water coming out of the tap in the main, without the misfortune where you might have pollution, entering, especially the reticulation systems. That is something that we have to work very closely in with regard to our regulatory and compliance monitoring. But in terms of generally water coming out of the tap, where all things are equal, we are still in a good space so far as South African tap water is concerned.
And Sputnik, I want to quiz you on that. I don't know if all things are equal when it comes to the supply of water in South Africa. I mean, when you look at certain rural communities or communities that are not necessarily sitting in sprawling urban areas, their water comes out brown. It is dirty. It is muddy. That is not fit for human consumption. And yet we cannot say where all things are equal, because it appears that certain areas get a better service level than others. And that, unfortunately, is a reality that South Africans are beginning to live with. You can't surely deny that.
Leanne, that is why I'm saying if all things are equal, we know that some of the issues that you are raising are real and they are there. And that is why our compliance monitoring colleagues have got a huge task on their hands. And part of what came out of our budget vote issues that Minister and Deputy Minister related to in the previous financial year is the issue of strengthening the compliance, monitoring and enforcement component of the department, because that is where we feel that if we are able to have much more strength, we can then be able to take to task all these municipalities and all the other people that pollute, because issues of water that comes out of a tap and ultimately is not of good quality for human consumption implies that along the line something went wrong. So it would be that between the treatment at the water board, the reservoirs of the municipalities, and the pipelines towards consumption, there is a fault somewhere, and that is why it is important for us to make sure that the issue of operations and maintenance is the number one thing that we look at throughout the value chain. It cannot be just at bulk situations, but it has got to speak to the reticulation. It has got to speak to ultimately the maintenance of all the value chain as we refer to.
All right, Sputnik, we have to leave it there, but we thank you very, very much for talking to us here on the program and the key issues to take out of that: save water and also those challenges that are facing the water department. So that was Sputnik Ratau, National Spokesperson of the Department of Water and Sanitation, cautioning South Africans to use water sparingly as these temperatures rise in most parts of the country.